Ladies and gentlemen, this is Chris Collier, your host of Conquer with Chris, the podcast you don't want to miss. I have the great opportunity of having Cyrus Webb on. Cyrus, welcome to the show yet again.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much again for having me. Really appreciate it.
This guy, let me tell you about this guy for a minute. He is an entrepreneur extraordinaire. Can't say it enough. Not only that, he's a good guy. Cyrus is in Mississippi. He likes to say he's a country boy. He's an author. He is, listen to this now, 20 years in broadcasting, 15 of those podcasting online. He's an Amazon influencer and a total coach, online success story. And it only took him 20 years to do overnight success. So don't think he's overnight because it took him 20 plus years. So welcome to the show, Cyrus. Tell a little bit people about your background a little bit, and we'll get into it.
All right, Chris. Thanks again. Really appreciate the opportunity. As you said, I'm really excited about this year. Excited to be back with you as we're celebrating 20 years of Conversations Live, the radio show. So I started the show when I was 28 years old, and it has definitely changed my life. It opened up doors for me I never could have imagined. As you mentioned, from Mississippi, I never thought this would be the life I would be living. I didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs, didn't come from a family with money or with any type of public profile. But I had a dream and I had faith, and that is what has got me to where I am today. As you mentioned, I'm an author, just celebrating a re-release of my book, Power Your Life with a Positive, thanks to Mango Press and Barnes & Noble. And also gearing up for what's going to be a really exciting year this year, including a 20-city tour, Chris, that I'll be traveling as we're promoting the 20 years and a documentary coming up this summer.
That's going to be great. Just let us know when you're in Atlanta because that's where we're based.
Right.
For now, that may change. But listen, so 20-city, is that one for every year? Is that how you kind of planned it?
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, I'm a simple guy. So I was like, okay, 20 years, 20 cities, that's doable. Let's do it.
Yeah, this is the wow, that is awesome. 20 years, 20 cities. And so with that let's talk about that because like you said, you're a simple guy, you're from Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you have to get out of your own way to make this all work, right? Because we all have, I know being in this space, we all have obstacles and challenges we have to overcome in ourselves. I remember one of my friends, he said, you have to kill the giants that are inside of you, the midgets that are inside of you versus the giants outside of you. You got to kill the things that are inside of you that prevent you from growing versus the giants that are outside. So how do you do that?
Well, Chris, as someone who's only 5'5.5", I'm a midget myself. So you're right. I do have to kill my inner midget too to do it. But for myself, it is funny. This, Chris, and some of your audience, some of my audience that's watching may know I am a suicide attempt survivor. And my attempt at suicide was not about abuse, neglect, bullying, anything like that. I really felt unworthy. I was someone who grew up being told that I was smart, that I would achieve things, but I didn't believe that. And that's the irony of my life. I think that people saw in me what I didn't see in myself. And it wasn't until I was 20 years old, 8 years before I would start Conversations Live, that literally it hit me that I was put here for a reason, that God had me here for a reason. And I believed in God even before then, but it became real to me at 20 that God had put something special in me, and it was up to me to do the work. Have the faith, do the work, and God would take care of the rest. And once I did that, Chris, it really did change everything for me to an extent. And to your point of getting out of my own way, as the success started happening, I got scared because then I felt like, am I going to be able to keep this up?
That's a great point, Cyrus, because at the end, what we have the greatest fear of is not fear of failure, but success. Can I keep? Will I screw this all up? Will I make fun of will the family be made fun of, or friends make fun of me because I didn't stay successful? Right?
Yeah. And that was it for me. And it was like, even though every year was like, things were expanding, things I didn't even see. And that's the beautiful thing about faith. I didn't even know some of the things, what I jokingly call with my friends unintended consequences. They really came from me planning and nurturing and God making it grow. And that's why for me, as the years went on, I realized there are people that I've never even met who know who I am. There are people who will listen to my show, and I would see the numbers, Chris. As we look at the numbers and all of that, but we don't think about those are people. And as I was going on, I kept thinking, I don't know if this is this one of these things that's going to last? Am I going to be able to keep growing and meeting the expectation? And what I realized was that was the wrong way to look at it. For me, what works is not trying to beat, the numbers from last week or whatever. It is to bring my best every day because that's the only thing I can control. I can't control how many people watch. I can control how many people listen. I can't control how many people read a book, but I can control how I show up every day. So as I stay intentional on that, that is when I saw things just skyrocket. And that's what I've been able to experience now.
Wow, that's great. Two things I want to cover here real quick.
Yeah.
I don't remember ever hearing that you were a suicide survivor before. So
Oh,
congratulations
wow.
for not being successful
Yeah.
in that. And then secondly is I would say probably you launching the podcast or the interview, the Conversations Live probably was more of you getting therapy than you even realize.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And that is a really good point. And I tell people I've now interviewed this year, I will interview my 12,000th guest of my career. And again, me, a little country boy in Mississippi with no college education, no broadcast experience. I'm talking to doctors, lawyers, CEO of companies, some of the biggest names in arts and entertainment, literally every week. And through that, you're exactly right. I've gotten so much from them. So many things I've been able to take in for myself that my audience has benefited from. And also, what I've also been able to do is give the gift of visibility to others. Because I think for so many people, this wasn't true in my case, but for so many people, they just want to know they're seen. It wasn't that I didn't think I was seen, I didn't think I was worthy. And I meet people now who, they'll talk about, radio show we did 8-10 years ago, Chris, and say, you know what, that really helped me. And that is the biggest payoff I could ever get because I treat every guest, this, the same. I don't care if it's a A-list celebrity or whoever, you get the same amount of prep, you get the same amount of attention. And because to me, all of us, that's our big thing. Chris, I credit your wife, Angela, for really helping me change the trajectory of my broadcasting life, my very first show back in July of 2003. Because when a lot of people don't realize Conversations Live didn't start off Conversations Live. It started off Let's Talk. And the premise of the show was supposed to be, which was crazy, but me as a talking head sharing my thought, which Chris, I don't even do that. But that was what they saw for me is me giving my thoughts about like I thought I was somebody to tell people about things going on, and people would call in. And as I was introducing the show, that first episode, it just didn't feel right because that wasn't even my nature to try to tell people what to do and how they should think about something. And when your wife, Angela Collier, called in, and something in me, I know it was God, told me to say, Cyrus, why don't you ask her about herself? And when I asked Angela to tell people about her, I realized that's what I was supposed to be doing. And that's now 20 years later is what I've continued to do. People they don't hear my opinions at all on the air. It's all about the guest. The guest is the star of the show. And that's to me the way it should be.
That is so critical because even in marketing and sales, the most important thing, Cyrus, that someone can hear is their own name, right? Mm-hmm. So if you always make it about someone else, you highlighting them, you encouraging them, you giving them their kudos on air. That is amazing. And I know it works because I'm right behind you, right? I'm coming up behind you. So the thing is we know that works because people want to feel appreciated, loved, respected, and they need to have space to build their own platform. So as someone who's done that well, you've branched out into other things, like you said, you're an author now, an Amazon influencer. Tell the people a little bit how that both those happened, right? How both those happened. You became an author first.
Right. Yeah. And Chris, this is always a funny story to me. So what people don't realize, what people got to know as the first book was the first edition of this book, Words That Choose to Live By. However, that is not really true because in 2004, I was one of those people who was stapling books together. Chris, you've seen those chapbooks, stapling books together, selling them at events. I laugh about it now because some things are just meant to be. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it would have never dawned on me at the time I would have a book available for the world to, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'd never seen that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you don't know what you don't know. But I was like, I heard about these chapbooks. I'm like, you printed them out, you staple them, la la la. I was like, oh, I can do that, and that's how I started, right? So writing, yes, has always been a part of me. So when I knew my platform was going to be based on positivity, inspiring people, Word That Choose to Live By seemed to be the perfect fit. And then I ended up getting a book deal for this book by Mango Publishing, Power Your Life with the Positive, that took some of the celebrity interviews I've done and shared their inspirational thoughts. So yeah, it definitely, the radio show provided the platform and the reach. And then I maximized on that, Chris, with things like what I'm doing with the books and other things that I'm able to do as well.
Well, I think also that you started doing book reviews,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped you gain some street cred, if it were,
Yeah.
with the publishing community. So that gave you, trust me, I understand about underground printing and stuff because my first book, which became my first real book, I went to Kinko's and just had a bunch of copies run. They stapled it together for me because I didn't want to take a chance messing it up, right?
Right, right.
I get it. I get it. So for those that are out there hustling, what would you say to them that maybe they just got their Kinko book done or
Mm-hmm.
something? What would you first off, let me say this. The barriers are down now. Amazon
Oh
is
yeah.
real easy for you to publish.
Yeah.
Real easy.
Mm-hmm.
So encourage them. Take a couple minutes and encourage somebody who might be thinking about getting into becoming an author, trying to get their book published, trying to get their course created, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, Chris, I think the biggest lesson, and take it from someone who's literally lived this. I'm not one of these people. If I don't know something, I'm not going to try to talk to people like I know what I'm talking about. But this I know, and this is what I know based on what Chris just said. The limitations are only now inside of you
Mm.
because technology has really leveled the playing field in ways that we could not have imagined, Chris, 20 years ago. You know, the fact that we could have our book on the same platform as Stephen King or John Saul or Jerry Jenkins or TD Jakes. Think about that. Think about how big that is, right? And so the limitations you have are only the ones you put on yourself. And I will add this, Chris, that you allow to be put on you by those around you. Because I had people telling me I don't talk about it a lot because it's not worth even the time. But I had people telling me, you're not going to be able to do it in radio. You're
Mm.
not going to be able to sell books. Who do you think you are being an influencer? You don't have the look to be an influencer. And so, people will tell you that now. They'll tell you that for a couple of reasons. This is what I found, Chris, and I think you'll agree with me. One, because they put their limitations on you, or they feel as though you're less than, but to me it doesn't matter because I have learned in my life that what matters is what God says and what I believe. And if I believe that God has given me something to share, I mean, how many have read, can any good thing come out of Bethlehem? I mean, I
Right.
mean, the thing is, we can't allow people or ourselves to put limitations on the large gift that God has given us. And that's what I have decided for myself. So I don't even hear the noise. The fact that I've been here 20 years and there are people who were along the journey that are no longer even in the industry, I think says a whole lot. So I don't have to say anything about them. I think the work speaks for itself.
I think a lot of times though, Cyrus, is people mean well.
Mm-hmm.
They say stuff like you can't do that because they don't want to see you get hurt, right? And
Yeah.
they don't realize that they're actually hurting you more because that is what you're created to do, right?
Yeah.
One of the things is like people don't understand how, like when you're called to do something like this, how this drives you, it motivates you, it it's not everything because you realize there's other things in your life, but it really
Yeah.
motivates you to do this, right?
Yeah.
So I think they try to keep, because when people try to go in business, a lot of them say, oh, don't do that. That kind of business never works. But you may be made for that, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
what would you say for those people that they have a young person in their house, teenager, young person, um, young adult, that they want to do something different. It doesn't seem to fit in the status quo or even what the family's done in the past. How would you encourage that parent or that person watching the child, young person, into helping that child develop?
Yeah. You know what, Chris? I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. And I have a very personal thing, and hopefully I won't get emotional saying it because, as I mentioned, my family did not come from money. I am literally one generation away from segregation. My mother, Chris, picked cotton and not for fun. you know, so I think about that, and yet me growing up, being this peculiar little boy, liking to draw and write, they never told me not to do it. They never told me you can't do it. They gave me the runway to figure it out myself. Because you have to remember, my family, they had not entrepreneurship was something they read about, saw on television. They had never experienced that. So they couldn't maybe bring themselves to say, Cyrus, you're not gonna be able to do that. I don't even know, to be honest with you, Chris, if they thought it would work. But I will tell you this, they never told me it couldn't. And that gave me the breathing room to figure it out myself. Now, that way it wasn't on them. So I would say to parents, and to people, who have someone around them who is trying to do something different. I remember my grandmother telling me once and that I could be anything. And I said, anything? She says, if you have faith in God and do the work, you can be anything. She told me that I was less than 12 years old, Chris. I still remember that because that is something that I remembered. And again, I believed my grandmother. You know, I don't even know she believed that. I'm just being real. I don't know because the day before she died, this is a true story. May 25th, 2008. 2000, I'm sorry, in 14. The day before she died, she told me, Cyrus, I never thought you would have achieved all that you have. And that meant so much to me because I was so glad she got to see a glimpse of it. Now, ironically and sadly, I had gotten the book deal for this book, the first edition of this book. She wasn't alive to see the book when it actually came out. But the idea that, she got to see a part of it. And really I credit her for that. In fact, I dedicated that book to her because I think that is so important. You have to give, and again, this is for something not, yes, you have to be realistic, but I think the worst thing we can do again is put our own limitations on others, especially young people.
That's so well said, Cyrus. I would say to add to that is she saw because she was, excuse the reference, she was like Moses.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go to the top of the mountain and see into the promised land. She could see the trajectory that you had,
Mm-hmm.
knew that it was only going to get, as a pastor friend of mine said, it's going to get gooder and gooder.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And again, I give my family so much credit. Now, I will say this, Chris, I've never really talked about this publicly, but um, part of what I've had to learn though along this journey is that this life is not for my family. So you notice, Chris, you don't see pictures of my family because they don't want that. They're not on social media. 90% of my family is not even on social media. And I respect that. I don't try to. I used to want them to be a part of it, but then I realized, okay, they don't really. they this is a little bit too much, for them. My grandmother before she died, we would be somewhere and someone would come up to me and ask to take a picture or say, "Hey, I got your book." My mom's like, my grandma's will be like, "Do you know them?" I'm like, "Well, no." I She's like, "Well, why are they talking?" you know, because they grew up in a different time. I mean, but it's one of those things I've had to balance. Even my nephew, who I love to death, you've seen him in some pictures. He does not like the attention, but he will, if it's a special occasion, he will take a picture or two. But he's not. If he'll be at an event, but he'll ask me not to photograph him, and I respect that. So that's also been the thing. I think we as entrepreneurs and creatives and people in the public being mindful of that, not trying to push something on people, just like we don't want people pushing anything on us, pushing things on people that they don't want. And that's one thing I respect about my family. They support me, but they don't necessarily want to be a part of it. And so that's been part of what I've had to learn as well.
That is phenomenal thought process, because a lot of times, like, if you get involved in a business or something, you're always trying to get family involved. So
Mm-hmm.
you you feel like they're supporting you, but there's other ways they can support besides the
Yeah.
money,
Yeah.
or them buying a product or a service from you. And sometimes you might not want them to buy a product or service from you
Mm-hmm.
because the other day is like, if you're a lawnmower landscaper, you may not want, because they might be a little bit too picky. If you cook, for example, I didn't want grits, I wanted hash browns, or whatever the case may be, and that
Right.
wasn't even an option.
Right.
So that's wise. That's wise. So you got the book deal, and you started reviewing books, and that
Mm-hmm.
probably is how you got on Amazon. But tell the
Yeah.
people exactly how that worked out.
Yeah. So in 2010, I never will forget the year because I had a bad experience with another platform. And that led me to Amazon to write, because I was writing at the time for our magazine, Conversations Magazine. I was writing music reviews, book reviews, and I was looking for a platform to do that on. So that led me to Amazon in 2010. But again, my ignorance was the biggest blessing for me, Chris, because again, I want people to know I didn't start all this to make money. I didn't even know this was going to be a career. I had a full-time job. Chris, you know this. When I started all of this, I didn't know that this was going to become what it has become. But in 2010, I started writing the reviews, didn't know anything about how it even worked. I just was looking for a platform. Didn't know there was a thing as a ranking. Didn't know that I knew people read the reviews because that's what you want. I didn't know businesses read the reviews. I didn't know they looked for reviewers. I didn't know any of that. So fast forward from 2010 to 2014, I start getting approached. So again, there was a process. So getting approached from brands like, "Hey, we got this. We'd love to send it to you to see what your thoughts are." And so I'd be like, "Okay, send it to me for free." They're like, "Yeah,
You want to
yeah,
send it back?
yeah." And so that started. That was 2014, and within a year and a half, everything just ballooned. And so it went from, "Hey, we'll send you this selfie stick," to, "We have a new refrigerator we'd like to send you. We have a new sofa we'd like to send you. We have so then in 2020, that's when Amazon started their on-camera personality. So 10 years later, I want people to get that. So this does not happen overnight. 2010, I literally wrote my first review on Amazon. 2020, they offered me the opportunity to be one of their own camera hosts. And now, starting this year, I have a daily show on Amazon Live, basically showing people how to be able to find products for themselves, for their family and friends. And yeah, so it's become almost its own business within my brand.
Wow, phenomenal. So someone's here, they're listening to your story, they're empowered, they're encouraged. How can they find you, Cyrus?
I made it very easy. CyrusWebb.com is the website, but I'm also on all social media, Chris, all except for one, because I do have a relationship with Meta. So you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well, of course, on LinkedIn. It's Cyrus Webb. On Instagram, it is Cyrus Webb Reviews, because I also have a review show on Instagram that started this year. But yeah, I'm very easy to find, and I do respond back. You send me a message, would love to be able to connect.
Well, any quote And you have a quote, a favorite quote you like to share with the people before we go?
In 2000, actually, it was 1994, Chris. My art teacher at the time wrote in my yearbook, my senior year, be the person you want others to think you are. And that I didn't understand that at the time, but that's what I would say to people. If you are being authentic every day, you don't have to worry about putting on a show. You don't have to worry about a pretense. So be the person. But the biggest compliment I get, Chris, is when people meet me in person and say, "You're just like you are online." and I mean, and I think, wow, thank you. That is because then I know I'm doing something right. So be authentic. That is my big thing. If you be yourself, God will take care of the rest.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Well, we've come to an end of another episode. My name's Chris Collier, your host of Conquer with Chris, the podcast you don't want to miss. I want to thank my guest Cyrus Webb for being on. And I want to thank each of you for being on. Whether you're on the audio or video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much. Have a great day.